Hello everybody, thanks for tuning into Skern Station. This Blood Death Knight guide for patch 8.3 will show you the most important things you need to know for tanking with this specialization. In this video we will go through strengths and weaknesses, the recommended builds and talents, the top Azeroth traits as well as the stat priority, the best essences that you should use, and last but not least we'll go through the best corruption effects as well as the combat rotation and the defensive cooldowns. Before we start, don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed this video and subscribe for more guides and gaming content on this channel. Without further ado, let's start with the strengths and weaknesses. Blood Death Knights are extremely fun to play and they have an engaging playstyle using self-healing as primary source of tanking damage. With an excellent defensive toolkit, they bring great utility to every group. They have a high self-sustain in fights because they leech the blood and life force like a vampire to tank damage. Gorefiend's Grasp and Death Grip allow you to pull the mobs literally to you. These two skills are great for Mythic Plus. Unfortunately, they have some pretty obvious downsides. Their mobility is by far the worst compared to all other tanks currently in the game, and due to their reactive mitigation model from their self-healing, their hit points might drop disturbingly low. This sometimes unpredictable health spikes make it difficult for healers to keep you alive. Blood Death Knights are a force to be reckoned with, and experienced players will find an answer to every tanking encounter. Let's continue with the talents. On the first row, it is recommended to pick Heartbreaker. Alternatively, you can choose Blood Drinker too, but it is an active ability and if you're starting out, it might be better to keep your rotation simple. Pick Hemostasis on the second row. Each enemy hit with Blood Boil will increase the damage and healing done by your next Death Strike by 8%, stacking up to 5 times. The two other alternatives are not viable at the moment. On the next row, pick Ossuary. This is the best talent and will reduce the cost of your Death Strike by 5 runic power if you have at least 5 Bone Shield charges. Additionally, it will increase your maximum runic power by 10 points. If you need more health when starting out, you could consider picking Foul Bulwark. When you play correctly your Death Knight with this talent, you would get around 7 to 8% more hit points. Overall, it is recommended to pick Ossuary. It brings more benefits. The best talent on the fourth row is Will of the Forsaken. Sometimes your health might drop for a short period of time and the damage absorption will keep you alive. Grip of the Dead is definitely recommended on the fifth row. It will help you controlling and kiting groups of enemies. On the sixth row, pick Bloodworms. This is the best talent and the only one worth considering. The auto-attack damage dealt by the Bloodworms is significant. The defensive bonus they add is also good when tanking difficult content. Choose Red Thirsts on the last row. The cooldown reduction for Vampiric Blood is just too good and it will help you use this skill much more often. These were the recommended talents. Feel free to share your opinion and your own talent build. Let's continue with the Azeroth armor traits for the first two outer rings, tier 4 and tier 3. In this overview, you see the DPS per second for 1, 2 or 3 stacked Azeroth traits. Green is if you only have one trait, white if you have 2 Azeroth armor pieces with the same trait, and blue if you have all 3 Azeroth armor pieces with the same trait. Endless Hunger is the strongest for the 2 outer rings and currently the optimum. Ancient Bulwark and Blightborn Fusion are also very strong if you can stack them 3 times. In this second graph, you see that Overwhelming Power is the best trait for the second tier ring. Overall, Azeroth traits are very important and you should keep these two graphs in mind when you receive new Azeroth gear. It is important to note that these two tables focus on the damage output and not to increase your tanking capabilities. Since Blood Decays are very good tanks already, you can focus all your Azeroth armor traits on increasing your damage output. Let's proceed with the stat priority for Blood Decays. According to simulations, the best possible stats at the moment to increase the blood decays damage would be the following: crit at 50%, haste at around 10, mastery at around 10, and versatility at around 30. It is important to keep this order in mind when you receive new gear. So first critical strike, then versatility, haste and mastery, if you want to increase your damage output. But if you want to increase your tanking capabilities, I recommend to pick versatility, haste, crit strike and mastery in this respective order. Essences are also a key part that you require to tank efficiently. I recommend to pick Consecrated Flame as your major essence in Mythic Plus, because every little bit of extra damage will help you in pushing high keys. And in the rain environment, you have enough healers to keep you alive, so keep your focus on the damage here. Concerning your miners, you should always be picking first the Aegis of the Deep. This miner will give you a great versatility boost and your self-heals will be stronger. Nullification Dynamo. This passive null barrier will provide you with a good absorb shield, and when it explodes it will deal a good amount of damage. The third one is Conflict and Strive. This one is very good and you should pick it if you have it. But if you don't, because you don't like to do PvP, Strength of the Warden is your other option for your minor power. It will help you tanking. With patch 8.3, Blizzard introduced corruption effects. The best corruption effects for blood decays is Twilight Devastation by far. If you can stack it, do it. Put everything into Twilight Devastation for a good AoE damage burst. Gushing Wound is a very efficient single target corruption effect. Twisted Appendage is also a good effect that can be mentioned. Here it is unfortunately quite random what effects you get from your loot. Manage your corruption and do not go too high if you're tanking. You will not want to have to take care of the negative corruption effects while you're tanking normal boss mechanics. Experiment with your corruption effects and try to find a good balance for you. Now that we know all important stuff concerning the Blood Death Knights, let's proceed with the combat rotation. The single target and multi-target combat rotation is very similar. Use your Taunt or Death Grip to pull the enemy. It is important to note that if it is your first pull and you have no stacks of bone armor, you should use, as soon as you pull, your defensive cooldown Dancing Rune Weapon. This cooldown will allow you to build up bone shield stacks much faster. The more bone shield stacks you have, the better. Try always having at the minimum 7 stacks of bone shields. But in the case that you have already enough bone shield stacks, you're safe to pull without using any defensive cooldowns. Just keep that in mind when you start combat. If you have bone shield stacks, it is safe. If not, use Dancing Rune Weapon or any other defensive cooldown to mitigate the damage while you're building up your bone shields. Next, you can use Death Keres to apply Blood Plague for one target at a range while it is running towards you or while kiting. Preferably use Blood Boil if there is one or several targets surrounding you at melee range. The good thing about Blood Boil is that it will apply Blood Plague on all the enemies surrounding you. This debuff will drain health from the targets over time. Now it's time to build up bone shield stacks with your skill Morrowind. As mentioned before, your goal is to have minimum 7 stacks of bone shield up all the time. Preferably keep it capped. Without bone shields, you're pretty squishy, and you should at all costs avoid tanking without them. While you're building up bone shield stacks with Morrowind, you should be using Death Strike in these cases. The first one is immediately after taking a lot of damage, or if you're missing enough hit points to benefit from the self-healing. The second case is when your next rune spender will overcap your runic power. Never overcap runic power. Use Death Strike to spend your runic power at all time. Remember to use Blood Boil if any enemies do not have your Blood Plague disease, or if you have 2 charges of Blood Boil. Be sure to place your Death and Decay field below you if you're fighting at least 3 enemies, or if you can cast it for free due to the Crimson Scourge proc. Don't waste those procs. Use Heart Strike to damage your enemies. Be sure to use Heart Strike within your red Death and Decay area. If you do so, you will cleave 3 targets with this skill. Keep that in mind and use that nice cleave damage. From this, it is important that you keep 2 things in mind. Use Morrowind to keep your Bone Shield stacks up. Minimum 7 Bone Shield stacks. If you're gonna cap runic power, spend that runic power using Death Strike. Overall, Blood Decays are a fun class to play, and with time you will get better and you would get a feel for tanking with this specialization. Remember also that you can taunt with Dark Command and with Death Grip. Death Grip can also interrupt some casters additionally. Also keep in mind that you should be always having 3 runes recharging at the same time. That is the optimal. Now let's have a look at the defensive cooldowns. The anti-magic shields will absorb 30% of your maximum health and magic damage. The damage mitigated will generate runic power, so keep that in mind. When you're receiving magic damage, use anti-magic shield. Your second defensive cooldown is Dancing Rune Weapon. It increases the parry chance by 40% and your damage and resource generation, as we heard before. Use it in situations where you can benefit from the offensive and defensive boost of this ability. Use it also in your first pull when you have 0 Bone Shield stacks, as we heard at the beginning of the video. The third defensive cooldown is Vampiric Blood. It will increase your maximum health and the amount of healing received by 30% for 10 seconds. Use it proactively when you expect a lot of incoming damage or when you are at low health in oh shit situations. This is a low cooldown, so use it as often as you can, especially when you're pulling big packs. Icebound Fortitude is your last defensive cooldown. It will reduce all the damage taken by 30% for 8 seconds. Use it when you expect high incoming damage. It will also free you from a stun. So people, I hope you enjoyed this video and it helps you in becoming a better Blood DK. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more. See you on a Twitch stream.